Introduce my next guest, Annelle Sheline, who joins me live from Washington, D.C. She's a former State Department officer specializing in Middle East human rights and policy. Thank you so much for being with us on the program. It seems like the conversation of this war has shifted now to the Strait of Hormuz, obviously seeing the oil and gas prices increasing there as time passes. Trump is trying as hard as he can to keep the prices as low as possible. But of course, we do know the longer that this war drags on, the more we're going to see those prices increase. I want to first just get your assessment on what we're seeing unfold currently.
Thank you for having me. I mean, it seems quite clear that Trump was not prepared for what this war would entail. He, as others have said, seems to have thought that he could go in with a Venezuela-like strike, murder, assassinate the supreme leader, and that someone else would step in, like similar to a Delcy Rodriguez in Venezuela, who would be more amenable to America's demands. And clearly that is not what has happened. Iran has prepared to fight a war like this for a generation at least. And given their experiences in the 12-day war last summer, they were significantly more prepared and were orienting themselves towards another attack such as this. And so at this point, even if Trump were to be ready to try to declare victory, to say, we got the supreme leader, now we're going to be done, I don't think Iran is there. Iran needs to make sure that they have imposed sufficient pain on the United States, on Israel, on the Gulf countries, and on the whole world to restore deterrence such that the United States and Israel won't try to attack Iran again in a few months or a year. And so I think what we're likely to see is oil prices continue to rise, a terrible impact on the global economy. Also thinking about fertilizer trying to make its way through the Strait of Hormuz. This time of year is when farmers need to be sowing their crops. So we could be potentially seeing a shortage of food and grains or other food, months down the road if farmers aren't able to access the fertilizer they need. So Trump has really opened a Pandora's box here that I really don't think he was sufficiently aware of what this would entail and why no previous U.S. president has embarked on such a foolish course of action.
Right. I mean, talk to us a bit about the pressure that Donald Trump is currently under from his counterparts worldwide to reel back this war.
Well, certainly we know that the Gulf countries have been, I think the spokesperson for the Qatari foreign minister called this the biggest I told you so, because you had the leaders from Saudi Arabia, from Qatar, also from Turkey, from Egypt, Oman, all of these countries that had been saying very clearly to Trump to pursue diplomacy, to not attack Iran. Whereas it was Benjamin Netanyahu who had been arguing and saying that this would be easy. We're also learning relatively recently that apparently it was people like Jared Kushner and Witkoff, his advisors, who have no qualifications in foreign policy. They are real estate moguls. That they pushed for the idea that it would be a quick and easy campaign to remove the supreme leader from power and install a more compliant puppet government in Iran. And clearly, no one in the White House was willing to push back or to stand up to Trump and say, this is a terrible idea. This is going to be terrible for the American people. This is terrible for the region and terrible for the world. And, unfortunately, you're not really hearing, even now, many leaders in Europe standing up to him. Only the Prime Minister of Spain has stood up very clearly and said that the U.S. is not allowed to use Spanish bases to launch attacks on Iran. But other European leaders have yet to condemn this, which is a shocking assault on international law.
Why the silence?
Europe, unfortunately, is extremely dependent on the United States, even more so in the 4 years since the Russian invasion of Ukraine. And although Trump has been very clear that he wants European countries to spend more on their own defense, to be less dependent on the United States, which I think at this point they're realizing perhaps they should have gotten on that. But so much of the world, whether it's in Europe or countries in the Western Hemisphere, countries in Asia, depend on the United States so heavily for economic prosperity as well as security relationships. And I think the whole world is grappling with the fact that when you have a U.S. administration that is willing to throw the entire world system into chaos, really for no reason. There was no imminent threat. There was no reason that the United States needed to attack Iran. And just Iran cannot hit the United States. Just the entire premise of this war is based on lies that Trump didn't even work all that hard to sell to the American people. You think about how the Bush administration at least pretended that there were weapons of mass destruction in Iraq. Whereas this is why you see the vast majority of Americans are opposed to this war and deeply opposed to sending in U.S. troops, which is the only way historically. No regime change has ever been successfully conducted just by an air campaign. You have to put boots on the ground. And it's very concerning to think that Trump is contemplating this, because this would be so much worse than Iraq. Iran is a bigger country.
That would be completely against the U.S.'s current America First policy. That's something that Americans don't, of course, want to see. What they've also been saying, the sentiment that we're hearing from Americans, is that this is the United States fighting another country's war. I want to bring the Israel factor into the conversation now. Will Trump end this war when Israel is okay with ending the war? And what would that look like?
I think we may see Trump trying to end it before Israel wants it to end, given the pressure from his base, from hopefully those inside the White House that are advising him and saying this could cost the Republicans the control of Congress in the upcoming midterms. I think Israel wants to see complete regime collapse in Iran. We know, unfortunately, that they've also then talked about Turkey as their next target, that Israel feels threatened by the existence of any large, powerful, well-armed state in the region, and would like to see all other countries reduced to sort of something more similar to Israel, a sort of much smaller, Israel's vision of itself as ethnically homogenous, ignoring the presence of Palestinians with Israeli citizenship as well as under Israeli control. And so their vision is to have Israel, or to have Iran, be completely destroyed, broken up internally. And I don't think that Trump is going to be willing to go as far as Israel wants to. But again, I think the real question here will also be, when will Iran decide that the United States and Israel have learned a sufficient lesson, have been made to feel the pain of what happens when you attack a country like Iran. And so I think, again, even if Trump tries to say, okay, well, we got the supreme leader and we're done and we're going to declare mission accomplished, Iran may not be willing to do that. And again, Trump has opened up, like I said, a Pandora's box that it's going to be very difficult to shut again.
Indeed. Annelle Sheline, thank you so much for being with us here on TRT World. I appreciate your analysis.